The afternoon sun filtered through the glass ceiling of Valois Global's flagship mall in Lyon, casting geometric shadows across the polished marble floors. Marcus de Valois moved through his domain with the measured pace of a man accustomed to owning everything he surveyed. His sharp amber eyes swept over the luxury boutiques, noting the steady flow of customers and the pristine presentation that had made his retail empire legendary across Europe. At 35, Marcus had built Valois Global from his family's modest grocery chain into a luxury supermarket empire that catered to France's elite. Today's inspection was routine, or so he thought. His tailored charcoal suit moved with him like liquid shadow, and the circular white birthmark on the back of his right hand caught the light as he checked his platinum watch. Monsieur de Valois. His assistant Marie approached with her usual nervous energy. The quarterly reports are ready for your review. Marcus nodded curtly, his attention already shifting to the next item on his agenda. But fate had other plans. The first sign of trouble was a child's laughter echoing through the cosmetics section. A small girl with dark hair tied in pigtails was examining the colorful makeup displays with wide-eyed wonder, while a man knelt beside her, speaking in soft, patient tones. Something about the pair caught Marcus's attention. Perhaps it was the way the man's movements held a fluid grace that spoke of athletic training, or how he seemed hyper-aware of his surroundings despite his gentle demeanor with the child. "Papa, look at the pretty colors!" the little girl exclaimed in accented French, her voice carrying that pure joy only children possessed. The man, Aiden, though Marcus didn't know his name yet, smiled with such tenderness that it transformed his entire face. His warm brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he tucked a strand of the girl's hair behind her ear. "They are beautiful, Luna. But remember, we're only looking today." Marcus felt an odd tightness in his chest at the domestic scene. Something about the child's profile, the curve of her small hand as she reached for a lipstick, struck him as familiar in a way he couldn't place. That's when the first masked figure emerged from behind the jewelry counter. "Nobody move!" The robber's voice cracked with adrenaline as he brandished a knife toward the handful of afternoon shoppers. "Wallets and purses on the ground now." Two more accomplices appeared from different sections, herding the panicked customers toward the center of the store. Marcus's mind immediately shifted into crisis mode. He dealt with corporate espionage and hostile takeovers, but never armed robbery in his own establishment. The security guards were nowhere to be seen. Marcus realized with growing alarm that this was a coordinated attack, timed for when the guards would be changing shifts. "You!" The lead robber pointed his blade directly at Marcus, recognizing him from newspaper photos. The rich boy in the fancy suit. "You first." Marcus raised his hands slowly, calculating distances and escape routes. But his strategic mind faltered when he saw little Luna pressed against her father's side, her earlier joy replaced by wide-eyed terror. The robber stepped closer to Marcus, greed glinting in his eyes as he spotted the expensive watch and gold cufflinks. All of it. Now. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion so swift that Marcus almost missed it. Aiden moved like liquid lightning. One moment he was crouched protectively beside his daughter, and the next he was airborne, his body rotating with perfect form as his legs swept in a devastating arc. The robber's knife went flying as Aiden's foot connected with his wrist, and before the man could even register the pain, Aiden had him in a textbook judo throw that sent him crashing into a cosmetics display. The second robber rushed forward, but Aiden was already moving. He grabbed the attacker's arm, used his momentum against him, and executed a flawless shoulder throw that left the man groaning on the marble floor. The third accomplice took one look at his unconscious partners and fled toward the exit. The entire confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. As the remaining customers burst into applause and someone called the police, Marcus found himself staring at Aiden with newfound respect. The man wasn't even breathing hard, though his protective stance over his daughter revealed the fierce love that had motivated his actions. "Are you hurt, mister?" The small voice drew Marcus's attention downward. Little Luna had approached him with the fearless compassion of childhood, her tiny hand reaching out as if to check him for injuries. Marcus knelt to her level, touched by her concern. "I'm fine, thanks to your papas." The words died in his throat. There, on the back of Luna's small hand as she reached toward him, was a circular white birthmark, perfect in its symmetry, about the size of a coin, positioned exactly where Marcus bore his own family's genetic marker. The birthmark that had been passed down through the de Valois bloodline for over 3 centuries. The mark that appeared on fewer than 1 in 10 million people worldwide. The mark that proved beyond any doubt that this child shared his blood. Marcus's amber eyes snapped up to meet Aiden's warm brown ones, and in that instant, recognition flickered between them. 6 years of searching, 6 years of wondering about that one passionate night, 6 years of questions suddenly crystallized into one earth-shattering truth. Luna. Aiden's voice carried a note of warning as he gently pulled his daughter back to his side. We should go now. But Marcus was already rising to his full height, his mind racing. The child's features, which had seemed vaguely familiar, now revealed their true origin. She had Aiden's gentle eyes and expressive face, but her stubborn chin and the aristocratic line of her nose, those were unmistakably de Valois traits. Wait! Marcus called out, his voice rougher than intended. Please! Aiden's grip tightened protectively around Luna's shoulders, and Marcus saw a flash of something that might have been panic in those brown eyes. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. Thank you for what you did, Marcus said carefully, forcing his voice to remain level despite the chaos in his mind. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same, Aiden replied quietly, but his stance remained defensive. Come, Luna. We need to get home. As father and daughter walked away, Marcus stood frozen among the scattered cosmetics and broken glass, watching the small white birthmark on Luna's hand until they disappeared into the crowd beyond the mall entrance. For 6 years, he had searched for the Omega from that night. For 6 years, he had wondered if their brief but intense connection had left any lasting trace. Now he had his answer walking away from him in a faded jacket and worn jeans, holding the hand of a little girl who bore the mark of his bloodline. The hunt was about to begin. 6 years earlier, Olympic Village, Paris. The champagne bubbles caught the light from the crystal chandeliers as France's elite mingled in the exclusive sponsor reception. Aiden Morimoto, fresh from his 2nd consecutive Olympic gold medal victory, moved through the crowd with the quiet confidence that came from being at the absolute peak of his sport. At 22, he was already being called the greatest judoka of his generation. The formal reception felt surreal after the intensity of competition. Just hours ago, he had been locked in combat on the tatami, every muscle fiber focused on victory. Now, dressed in an elegant black suit that the Olympic Committee had provided, he felt oddly disconnected from the celebration swirling around him. Aiden! Coach Bernard's booming voice cut through the ambient noise. Come meet one of our most important sponsors. The older man approached with his usual calculating smile, but tonight there was something different in his demeanor, a hunger that made Aiden's instincts prickle with unease. Behind Bernard walked a man who commanded attention without trying, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored navy suit. This is Marcus de Valois, Bernard continued, his hand landing heavily on Aiden's shoulder. His family's company has been supporting French athletics for generations. Marcus extended his hand, and when their fingers touched, Aiden felt an electric shock run through his entire body. The Alpha's amber eyes held his with an intensity that made his breath catch, and suddenly the crowded reception hall seemed to fade into background noise. Congratulations on your victory, Marcus said, his voice low and rich. That final throw was extraordinary. Thank you, Aiden managed, his usual composure shaken by the unexpected surge of attraction. As an Omega, he was accustomed to Alpha attention, but this felt different, deeper, more dangerous. The conversation that followed was polite but charged with undercurrents that both men struggled to ignore. Marcus spoke knowledgeably about judo technique, revealing that he had trained in martial arts during his youth. Aiden found himself drawn to the businessman's quiet intelligence and the way his rare smiles transformed his austere features. When Bernard excused himself to network with other sponsors, neither man objected to being left alone. Would you like some air? Marcus asked as the reception grew more crowded. There's a balcony overlooking the Seine. Aiden nodded, not trusting his voice. The pheromone compatibility between them was overwhelming, creating a haze of desire that grew stronger with each passing moment. The balcony was blessedly quiet, with only the distant sounds of Paris nightlife drifting up from the river below. Marcus stood at the railing, his profile sharp against the city lights, and Aiden felt his careful self-control beginning to slip. I should congratulate you properly, Marcus said, turning to face him. What you accomplished today, 2 Olympic golds. It's legendary. It doesn't feel real yet, Aiden admitted. Sometimes I think I'll wake up and find it was all a dream. It's not a dream. Marcus stepped closer. Close enough that Aiden could smell his intoxicating alpha scent. You're extraordinary. What happened next felt as inevitable as gravity. Marcus's hand cupped Aiden's face with surprising gentleness. And when their lips met, the kiss ignited something primal in both of them. 6 years later, Aiden would still remember every detail. The taste of champagne on Marcus's tongue. The way the alpha's hands trembled slightly as they traced his jawline. The soft groan that escaped when Aiden pressed closer. They barely made it to Marcus's hotel suite. The night that followed was a blur of passionate intensity unlike anything Aiden had ever experienced. Marcus worshipped his body with a reverence that made Aiden feel like something precious, while Aiden gave himself completely to the connection that seemed to transcend physical attraction. When Marcus's teeth found the sensitive spot on Aiden's neck, the mating bite was as natural as breathing. Both men knew they were crossing a line that would change everything, but neither had the strength to stop. Aiden woke the next morning in tangled sheets, his body aching in the most delicious ways. The mating mark on his neck throbbed with a pleasant warmth that seemed to echo in his very bones. But the bed beside him was empty, and Marcus was nowhere to be found. Present day 3 weeks after the mall incident. Aiden's fingers unconsciously traced the faded scar on his neck as he watched Luna play in their small apartment's living room. The mating mark had never fully healed after Marcus's abandonment, a constant reminder of the night that had given him his greatest joy and deepest heartbreak. The pregnancy test had shown positive just 2 weeks after that magical night in Paris. Aiden had been terrified but also filled with a secret happiness. Despite Marcus's sudden disappearance, he had convinced himself that true mates would find their way back to each other. He had been so naive. Coach Bernard had been the first to notice the subtle changes in Aiden's scent, the way he tired more easily during training sessions. When confronted, Aiden had confessed everything, still believing that his coach would help him navigate the complicated situation. Instead, Bernard's reaction had been explosive. You little whore. The older man's face had gone purple with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? Seducing a sponsor at an Olympic celebration? This is exactly the kind of scandal that destroys careers. It wasn't like that, Aiden had protested weakly. We're mates. I have his mark. Mated to a billionaire sponsor? Bernard's laugh was harsh and ugly. You think he's going to claim some Olympic athlete's bastard? Wake up, boy. He used you for one night of entertainment. The words had hit like physical blows, but Bernard wasn't finished. You're done, the coach continued coldly. I've already spoken to Marcus's people. He wants nothing to do with you or your pregnancy. He's even considering withdrawing his sponsorship if this gets out. Your Olympic career is over. That's not true, Aiden had whispered, but doubt was already creeping in. Why else would Marcus have disappeared without a word? Prove me wrong, Bernard had challenged. Call him. Tell him about the baby. See what he says. But when Aiden tried to contact Marcus, he found himself blocked at every turn. Phone calls went unanswered, emails bounced back, and the few messages that got through received no response. The man who had whispered promises in the dark seemed to have vanished completely. Facing the choice between a public scandal that would destroy his remaining Olympic dreams and protecting his unborn child, Aiden had chosen the only path that made sense. He disappeared from the athletic world entirely, using his savings to find a small apartment far from the training facilities and media attention. Luna had been born during a snowy winter night, perfect and healthy, with Marcus's amber eyes and the distinctive de Valois birthmark. As Aiden held his daughter for the first time, he made a silent vow to give her everything he could, even if it meant sacrificing his own dreams. Now, watching Luna arrange her stuffed animals in careful rows, Aiden wondered if he had made the right choice. The past 6 years had been a constant struggle, working odd jobs to make ends meet, always looking over his shoulder, never quite able to settle anywhere permanently. But seeing Marcus again at the mall had brought everything flooding back. The way the alpha had looked at Luna, the recognition in those amber eyes, it was clear that Marcus finally knew the truth. The question was, what would he do with that knowledge? Aiden's phone buzzed with an unknown number, and his blood turned to ice when he saw the message preview. "We need to talk." The hunt had begun, just as he had always known it would. The only question now was whether he had the strength to face the man who had unknowingly shaped his entire life, or if he would do what he had always done, run and keep running, until there was nowhere left to hide. Outside their window, Lion glittered in the evening light, beautiful and treacherous as a spider's web. And somewhere in that web, Marcus de Valois was closing in, driven by questions that demanded answers and a connection that neither time nor distance had been able to break. Marcus stared at the DNA report in his hands, the scientific proof confirming what his heart had known the moment he saw Luna's birthmark. The child was his daughter, their daughter, with a 99.9% certainty that left no room for doubt. He sat in his penthouse office overlooking Lion, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. 3 weeks had passed since the mall incident, 3 weeks of intensive investigation by the best private detectives money could buy. What they had uncovered painted a picture that made his blood boil with rage. Not at Aiden, but at his own blind stupidity. The file on his mahogany desk contained everything. Employment records showing Aiden working multiple minimum wage jobs over the past 6 years. Medical records indicating no alpha partner or support system. School enrollment forms listing Luna de Morimoto with only one parent's signature. Most damning of all were the financial records showing a man who had once been sponsored by luxury brands now shopping at discount stores and clipping coupons. Marcus's hands clenched into fists as he remembered his own actions that morning after their night together. He had been called away on an urgent business crisis, a factory fire that threatened to destroy one of his major supply chains. In his rush to handle the emergency, he had left Aiden sleeping, intending to return before the Omega woke. By the time he made it back to the hotel, Aiden was gone, and his attempts to contact him through official Olympic channels had been blocked by Coach Bernard, who claimed the athlete wanted no further contact. He had been played, manipulated by a man who saw opportunity in chaos and profit in others' misery. His phone buzzed with a message from Henri, his head of security. Located. Small apartment, Rue de la République. Their home. Marcus closed the file and straightened his tie. It was time for answers. The building where Aiden lived was a far cry from the luxury Marcus was accustomed to. Paint peeled from the exterior walls, and the narrow stairwell smelled of cooking oil and old cigarettes. As he climbed to the 3rd floor, Marcus felt each step like a weight on his conscience. His daughter, had been living in poverty while he built an empire. He paused outside apartment 3B, his enhanced alpha hearing picking up the sound of a child's laughter from within. Luna's voice, bright and musical, was followed by Aiden's softer tones as he helped her with what sounded like homework. Marcus raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. How did one begin a conversation that would change 3 lives forever? The decision was made for him when the door suddenly opened, revealing Aiden with a bag of garbage in his hands. The Omega froze when he saw Marcus standing in the hallway, and for a moment, neither man moved. Up close, Marcus could see the changes that 6 years had wrought. Aiden was leaner now, his face bearing the kind of weathered strength that came from real hardship. But his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had haunted Marcus's dreams, were exactly the same. "You found us?" Aiden said quietly, his voice carefully neutral. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Marcus replied, fighting to keep his own emotions in check. "She has my birthmark, Aiden. My eyes. How long did you think you could hide my daughter from me?" A flash of pain crossed Aiden's features before his expression shuddered. "She's not your daughter. You made that clear 6 years ago." "I made nothing clear," Marcus snapped, his alpha pheromones spiking with frustration. "I never even knew she existed. What kind of game are you playing?" "Papa." Luna's voice came from inside the apartment, curious and cautious. "Who's at the door?" Aiden's protective instincts flared immediately. He stepped into the hallway and pulled the door mostly closed behind him, blocking Marcus's view of the interior. "No one, sweetheart. Keep working on your coloring." The casual dismissal ignited Marcus's temper. "No one? I'm her father. You're a stranger," Aiden hissed, his own control fraying. "You disappeared without a word. You ignored every attempt I made to contact you. You made it crystal clear that you wanted nothing to do with me or—" "That's a lie," Marcus cut him off, his voice deadly quiet. I tried to find you. I searched for months. Your coach told me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you were embarrassed by what happened. For a moment, confusion flickered across Aiden's features. Coach Bernard told you what? That you regretted our night together, that you were focusing on your career and didn't want any complications. Marcus stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over the smaller man. Was that all a lie? Were you planning to use my daughter to blackmail me? The accusation hit Aiden like a physical blow. His face went white, then flushed with anger. Get out, he whispered, his voice shaking with fury. Get out before I call the police. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus stated flatly. Not until you explain why my daughter is living in poverty while I have billions. Not until you tell me why you disappeared without giving me a chance to be a father. Because you didn't want to be one. Aiden's composure finally cracked. Because your people made it very clear that I was just a one-night stand, a mistake that needed to be handled quietly. Because I was told that any attempt to contact you or claim paternity would result in a lawsuit that would destroy what was left of my career. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. My people? What people? Your lawyers. Your representatives. They made sure I understood that Marcus de Valois had no intention of acknowledging a bastard child with some Olympic athlete. The words came out bitter and broken. So I did what I was told. I disappeared. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. Coach Bernard hadn't just manipulated Aiden. He had actively sabotaged any possibility of communication between them. The question was why. I never sent any lawyers, Marcus said slowly. I never even knew you were pregnant. If you had what? Aiden's laugh was hollow. You would have swooped in and saved us? Played happy families with the Omega who trapped you. You didn't trap me, Marcus said fiercely. That night, what we shared, it was real. The mating bite was real. I felt it too, Aiden. I've felt it every day since. Something flickered in Aiden's eyes. Hope, maybe, or just the memory of what they had once been. But before either could speak, footsteps echoed in the stairwell below. Aiden, a harsh voice called up from the second floor. Is that you making all that noise? Coach Bernard's voice sent ice through both men's veins. Marcus watched as all the color drained from Aiden's face, replaced by a fear so profound it was almost palpable. He can't be here, Aiden whispered, panic creeping into his voice. He promised if I stayed quiet, if I never contacted you. If you never contacted me, what? Marcus demanded, but Aiden was already pushing past him toward the stairs. Take Luna and go, Aiden said urgently. Please, he doesn't know about the birthmark. If he sees you both together. But it was too late. Coach Bernard rounded the corner onto the third-floor landing, and his calculating eyes immediately took in the scene before him. Marcus in his expensive suit, Aiden's panicked expression, and through the partially open apartment door, the sound of a child humming. The older man's face split into a cold smile that made Marcus's alpha instincts roar with protective fury. Well, Bernard said, his voice dripping with false joviality. Marcus de Valois himself. What brings France's retail prince to a neighborhood like this? Marcus felt Aiden tense beside him, and suddenly he understood. This man, this predator, had been controlling and manipulating Aiden for 6 years, using fear and threats to keep him isolated, keeping Marcus's daughter from him through lies and deception. I could ask you the same question, Bernard, Marcus replied evenly, his business mask sliding into place. Though I suspect I already know the answer. The coach's smile never wavered, but his eyes grew calculating. Just checking on an old student, making sure he's staying out of trouble. You know how these retired athletes can be, always looking for ways to make easy money from their past connections. The threat was clear, and Marcus saw Aiden flinch as if he'd been struck. But Marcus had built an empire by facing down men far more dangerous than a corrupt coach. I think, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. That conversation is long overdue. Don't you agree, Bernard? The hunt was no longer about finding his family. Now it was about protecting them and destroying the man who had stolen 6 years of their lives. The tension in the narrow hallway was suffocating. Marcus could feel his alpha instincts screaming at him to protect his mate and child from the predator standing before them, while Aiden seemed to shrink further against his apartment door with each passing second. Coach Bernard's smile widened as he took in the scene. "Touching reunion," he said, his voice dripping with mock sentiment. "Though I have to wonder what brings you here, Marcus. Surely a man of your stature has better things to do than visit old friends in such modest accommodations." "Cut the act, Bernard," Marcus said coldly. "We both know why I'm here." The older man's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Do we? Please, enlighten me." Marcus felt Aiden's hand brush against his arm. A warning, a plea for caution. But Marcus had spent too many years in boardrooms with sharks to be intimidated by a small-time coach with delusions of power. "Luna," Marcus called out, his voice carrying the natural authority of an alpha. "Come here, sweetheart." "No!" Aiden's protest was sharp with panic, but it was too late. The apartment door opened wider, and Luna appeared, her amber eyes curious as she looked up at the three adults in the hallway. "Papa?" she asked uncertainly, moving instinctively to Aiden's side. "Is everything okay?" Coach Bernard's gaze immediately locked onto the little girl, and Marcus watched as the man's expression shifted from smug confidence to something far more calculating. The coach's eyes traveled from Luna's face to her small hand, where the circular white birthmark was clearly visible. "Well," Bernard said slowly, his voice taking on a dangerous edge, "this is interesting." Marcus stepped forward, his imposing frame blocking Bernard's view of Luna. "Aiden, take her inside." But the coach wasn't finished. "You know, Marcus, I always wondered what happened to make our little Aiden disappear so suddenly from the athletic world. One day he was France's golden boy, destined for a third Olympic gold, and the next, he shrugged with feigned innocence. Gone without a trace." "Bernard, please." Aiden's voice was barely a whisper. "Don't do this." "Don't do what?" The coach's smile turned predatory. "Don't tell the truth? Don't mention how a certain Olympic champion threw away his entire career for a one-night stand with a wealthy sponsor." Marcus felt his control slipping. "You son of a... Papa, you're scaring me." Luna's small voice cut through the rising tension, and immediately both Marcus and Aiden focused on her frightened expression. Aiden knelt down to Luna's level, his voice gentle despite the chaos around them. "It's okay, sweetheart. Why don't you go to your room and play with your stuffed animals? The grown-ups need to talk." Luna nodded solemnly and disappeared back into the apartment, but not before giving Marcus one last curious look. The innocence in her eyes, his eyes, made something fierce and protective roar to life in his chest. "Smart girl," Bernard commented once she was gone. "Takes after her father, I'm sure. The question is, which father?" "You know exactly who her father is," Marcus snarled. "Just like you knew 6 years ago when you made sure we never found each other." Bernard's mask finally slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. "Oh, I knew. I figured it out the moment I saw that mating bite on Aiden's neck the morning after your little celebration. Did you really think I wouldn't put the pieces together?" Aiden made a sound of pain, his hand moving unconsciously to cover the faded scar on his neck. "But you see," Bernard continued, warming to his subject, "I also knew what an opportunity it represented. A 2-time Olympic champion, mated to one of France's wealthiest men? That kind of scandal, handled properly, could be very profitable." "Profitable?" Marcus felt sick. "You blackmailed him." "I protected him," Bernard corrected smoothly. "I protected both of you, actually. Do you have any idea what the media would have done with that story? Olympic hero's secret alpha lover? Billionaire sports star scandal? Your reputation would have been destroyed, Marcus. And as for Aiden," he shrugged. "Well, pregnant male athletes don't typically have long careers. So you lied to both of us," Marcus said, the pieces finally falling into place. "You told me Aiden wanted nothing to do with me, and you told him I wanted nothing to do with the baby. I told you both what you needed to hear to make the smart choice," Bernard replied without a hint of remorse. "And it worked out perfectly for everyone. You built your empire without scandal, Marcus. And Aiden, well, Aiden learned the value of staying quiet and keeping his head down." "Learned?" Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "What did you do to him?" Bernard's smile returned, colder than before. Nothing that wasn't necessary. A few reminders over the years about the importance of discretion. Some friendly advice about not reaching out to old connections. The occasional check-in to make sure he was staying out of trouble. You've been stalking him, Marcus realized with horror. For 6 years, you've been controlling him through fear. I've been protecting my investment, Bernard corrected. Did you really think I'd let such valuable information go to waste? The great Marcus de Valois, secret father to an Olympic champion's bastard child? That kind of leverage is priceless. Aiden finally found his voice, though it shook with suppressed rage. You destroyed my life, my career, my future. Everything I worked for since I was 5 years old. I saved your life, Bernard snapped back. Do you think the athletic commission would have let you compete while pregnant? Do you think sponsors would have lined up to support a single Omega father? I gave you a graceful exit and the chance to raise your daughter in peace. In poverty, Marcus interjected coldly. While you lined your pockets with hush money. Bernard's eyes gleamed. Speaking of which, I think it's time we discussed the future. Now that you know about your daughter, Marcus, I'm sure you'll want to do the right thing. Support her properly. Make sure she has everything she needs. His smile turned shark-like. I'm thinking a monthly stipend would be appropriate. Something substantial enough to ensure continued discretion. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of Marcus's controlled breathing. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that Bernard had to strain to hear him. You think you can blackmail me? I think I can expose you, Bernard replied confidently. One phone call to the right journalist, and your perfect reputation crumbles. Billionaire abandons Olympic hero and secret love child. The public loves a good scandal, especially one involving the wealthy elite. Marcus studied the older man for a long moment, then slowly reached into his jacket pocket. Bernard tensed, perhaps expecting violence, but Marcus simply pulled out his phone. Henri, he said when the call connected. Yes, it's Marcus. I need you to send the recording device footage from the hallway outside apartment 3B to Inspector Dubois at Lyon Police. Yes, all of it, including what's happening right now. Bernard's face went white. You're recording this? Building security cameras, Marcus said calmly, pointing to a small device mounted near the ceiling that Bernard had failed to notice. I own this building as of this morning. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right motivation and unlimited resources. You can't prove anything, Bernard blustered, but his confidence was cracking. Marcus smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. 6 years of financial records showing regular payments from an Olympic training fund account that you controlled. 6 years of Aiden living in poverty while you skimmed money meant for athlete support. 6 years of documented harassment and stalking behavior. He paused. And now, a recorded confession of blackmail, extortion, and conspiracy. Bernard took a step backward, his face now pale with panic. You don't understand. I was protecting the sport, protecting the integrity. You were protecting yourself, Marcus cut him off, and destroying innocent lives for profit. But that ends now. The sound of footsteps on the stairs announced the arrival of 2 uniformed police officers, followed by a plainclothes detective Marcus recognized from charity functions. Inspector Dubois, Marcus nodded as the detective reached the 3rd-floor landing. Thank you for coming so quickly. Monsieur de Valois, the inspector replied formally. We received your evidence packet. Very thorough. His stern gaze fixed on Coach Bernard. Bernard Leclerc, you're under arrest for extortion, embezzlement, and stalking. As the officers moved to handcuff the coach, Bernard's composure finally shattered completely. This isn't over, he shouted as they led him toward the stairs. You think you can just wave your money around and make this disappear? The truth will come out. Everyone will know what you are. His voice echoed in the stairwell until the building's front door slammed shut, leaving Marcus and Aiden alone in the sudden silence. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Aiden slowly sank against his apartment door, his legs seemingly unable to support him any longer. It's over, he whispered, as if afraid to believe it. He's really gone. Marcus knelt beside him, careful to move slowly and non-threateningly. It's over, he confirmed gently. He can never hurt you or Luna again. Aiden looked up at him with those warm brown eyes that had haunted his dreams for 6 years. Why? He asked quietly. Why go to all this trouble for us? You could have just demanded custody and walked away. Marcus reached out slowly, giving Aiden time to pull away, and gently touched the faded mating scar on his neck. Because you're mine, he said simply. Both of you. You always have been. For the first time in 6 years, Aiden didn't flinch away from his touch. And in that small gesture, Marcus dared to hope that healing might finally be possible. 2 days after Coach Bernard's arrest, the law offices of Du Bois and Associates buzzed with quiet efficiency as Marcus reviewed the mountain of evidence his legal team had uncovered. What had started as a simple case of blackmail and extortion had unraveled into something far more extensive, a web of corruption that reached deep into the French Olympic program. The financial audit is complete, his lead attorney, Marie Rousseau, said as she placed another thick folder on his desk. Bernard didn't just steal from one athlete support fund. He's been systematically embezzling money meant for training facilities, equipment, and athlete stipends for over a decade. Marcus felt his jaw clench as he scanned the documents. How much? Conservative estimate? Nearly 2 million euros. But that's just what we can prove definitively. Marie's expression was grim. There are dozens of athletes who received reduced support, canceled programs, delayed equipment purchases. Also, Bernard could line his own pockets. And Aiden was just the most profitable target, she confirmed. The threat of exposing your relationship, and later Luna's existence, gave Bernard leverage he used repeatedly. Every time Aiden tried to find steady employment, every time he applied for government assistance, Bernard would make a phone call. Keep him desperate, keep him dependent. The systematic cruelty of it made Marcus's alpha instincts roar with protective fury. For 6 years, while he had been building an empire, his mate and daughter had been deliberately kept in poverty by a man who saw their suffering as profit. I want him destroyed, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Professionally, financially, personally. I want him to understand exactly what he took from my family. Marie nodded grimly. The prosecutor is confident about criminal charges. With your testimony and the recorded confession, plus the financial evidence, Bernard is looking at significant prison time. But Marcus, she hesitated. You should know that this is going to be public. Very public. The media attention will be intense. Let it be, Marcus replied without hesitation. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting other people control my family's story. A soft knock on the office door interrupted them. Henri, Marcus's head of security, entered with a carefully neutral expression that immediately put Marcus on alert. Sir, there's been a development. Aiden and Luna are here. Marcus's head snapped up. Here? At the law office. Downstairs in the lobby. Aiden says he needs to speak with you urgently. Henri paused. He looks frightened. Marcus was out of his chair before Henri finished speaking. He took the elevator down to the marble-floored lobby, where he found Aiden pacing near the windows while Luna sat quietly in one of the leather chairs, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The moment Aiden saw him, relief flooded his features. Marcus, thank God. We need to talk. Privately. Of course. Marcus led them to a small conference room off the main lobby, closing the door behind them. What's wrong? Aiden ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Marcus remembered from their night together 6 years ago. I've been getting calls. Reporters, mostly, but also. He glanced at Luna, who was absorbed in whispering to her stuffed animal. Other coaches, officials from the Olympic Committee. They want to know if the rumors are true. What rumors? That you and that Luna. Aiden's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone leaked information about Bernard's arrest. About why he was blackmailing you. The whole story is going to come out. Isn't it? Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. How much do they know? Enough. Aiden's laugh was bitter. One reporter called me this morning asking for comment on France's secret Olympic love child, and whether I plan to claim my share of the de Valois fortune. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This was exactly what Bernard had threatened. Public exposure designed to humiliate and destroy. Even from prison, The man's poison was still spreading. Aiden, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to face this kind of scrutiny. That's not why I'm here, Aiden said quickly. I'm here because... He looked at Luna again, then back at Marcus. Because I need to know what happens next. To us, to her. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with 6 years of separation, hurt, and misunderstanding. Marcus studied Aiden's face, seeing the fear and uncertainty there, but also something else. A fragile hope that he was afraid to acknowledge. What do you want to happen? Marcus asked carefully. Before Aiden could answer, Luna looked up from her rabbit. Are you my real papa? She asked Marcus with the direct innocence that only children possessed. The simple question stopped both men cold. Marcus knelt down to Luna's level, his heart hammering against his ribs. Would you like me to be? Luna considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Papa Aiden says my real papa lives far away and can't visit. But you're here, and you have the same mark I do. She held up her small hand, comparing the circular birthmark to the one on Marcus's. That's right, Marcus said softly. We have the same mark because we're family. Then why don't you live with us? Luna asked with devastating logic. Families live together. Marcus glanced at Aiden, who was watching the exchange with tears threatening in his eyes. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adults always say that, Luna said with a small sigh. But it's not really complicated. If you're my real papa and you want to be with us, then you should be with us, right? From the mouths of babes. Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling under the assault of his daughter's simple wisdom. Luna, Aiden said gently, why don't you color in your book while Marcus and I talk? She nodded and pulled out a coloring book and crayons from her small backpack, settling into the chair with the focused concentration of childhood. She's right, you know? Aiden said quietly once Luna was absorbed in her art. It doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't it? Marcus asked. 6 years, Aiden. 6 years of separation, of misunderstanding. How do we even begin to rebuild from that? The same way we built it the first time, Aiden replied, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. One day at a time, one choice at a time. Marcus studied the man who had haunted his dreams for 6 years. Aiden was different now, harder in some ways, more cautious, but there was a strength in him that hadn't been there before. The strength of someone who had survived impossible odds and come out fighting. The media attention is going to be brutal, Marcus warned. They'll dig into everything. Your past, your career, our relationship. Luna's going to grow up in the spotlight whether we want her to or not. I know. Aiden's jaw set with determination. But I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being afraid. And most of all, I'm tired of Luna growing up thinking her father didn't want her. The words hit their target with precision, and Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. I never stopped wanting her, he said hoarsely. I never stopped wanting you. If I had known. I know, Aiden interrupted gently. I know that now. Bernard made sure we both believed the worst of each other. But that's over now. The question is, what do we do now? Marcus looked at Luna, bent over her coloring book with fierce concentration, her tongue poking out slightly as she worked. His daughter, his family, everything he had searched for without even knowing what he was looking for. I want to come home, he said quietly. I want us to be a family, a real family, but only if that's what you want too. Aiden was quiet for so long that Marcus began to fear he had pushed too hard, asked for too much too soon. But when the Omega finally looked up, his warm brown eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've been waiting 6 years for you to say that, Aiden whispered. Before Marcus could respond, Luna looked up from her coloring. Does this mean Papa Marcus is going to live with us now? She asked hopefully. Marcus and Aiden exchanged a look that held 6 years of longing, pain, and tentative hope. Yes, sweetheart, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. If you'll have me, I'd like that very much. Luna beamed and went back to her coloring as if the most important question in the world had just been settled, which Marcus realized it had. Outside the conference room windows, lion glittered in the afternoon sun, and for the first time in 6 years, the future looked bright with possibility. There would be challenges ahead, media attention, legal battles, the complex work of rebuilding trust and love. But they would face those challenges together as a family. The web that Bernard had woven around them was finally unraveling. But in its place, something stronger was being built. Something that no amount of money or manipulation could ever destroy again. Real, honest, unbreakable love. The media circus outside the courthouse was everything Marcus had expected and more. Camera crews from every major French news outlet crowded the steps, while reporters shouted questions in multiple languages. The story had captured international attention. Olympic champion, billionaire alpha, secret child, corruption scandal. It had all the elements of a perfect tabloid storm. Marcus adjusted his tie as Henri navigated their car through the crowd of journalists. In the back seat, Aiden sat quietly, his hand clasped tightly in Luna's. Today was the day Coach Bernard would finally face justice for his crimes. Papa Marcus, why are there so many people? Luna asked, pressing her face to the tinted window to stare at the chaos outside. Because sometimes when someone does very bad things, lots of people want to know about it, Marcus explained gently. But don't worry, we're going to make sure he can never hurt anyone again. Over the past 3 months, their unconventional family had found its rhythm. Marcus had moved into a larger apartment. Not his penthouse, which felt too isolating, but a warm, family-friendly space where Luna could run and play. The transition hadn't always been smooth. 6 years of separation couldn't be erased overnight, but every day brought small victories. Luna calling him Papa Marcus without hesitation. Aiden slowly learning to trust again. Quiet evenings spent together building something new from the ashes of what they'd lost. The legal proceedings had been equally complex. Bernard's case had expanded far beyond simple blackmail as investigators uncovered the full scope of his corruption. Dozens of athletes had come forward with stories of manipulation, stolen opportunities, and financial abuse. The man who had positioned himself as a guardian of athletic integrity had been revealed as one of its greatest predators. Mr. de Valois, a reporter managed to get close enough to shout through the car window. Is it true that you're planning to marry Aiden Morimoto? What about the custody arrangements for Luna? Marcus ignored the questions, but he felt Aiden tense beside him. The media attention had been the hardest part of their reunion. Every aspect of their relationship was dissected, analyzed, and sensationalized. Luna's school had to increase security. Aiden couldn't go to the grocery store without being photographed. Their private pain had become public entertainment. But they had endured it together, and that made all the difference. Henri pulled into the secured parking area behind the courthouse, where they could enter without running the gauntlet of cameras. As they walked toward the building, Marcus noticed Aiden's steps slowing. You don't have to do this, Marcus said quietly. I can testify alone. No. Aiden's voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. I need to do this. For Luna, for all the athletes he hurt, and for myself. I need to look him in the eye and tell the truth about what he did to us. Marcus felt a surge of pride and love for this remarkable man who had survived 6 years of manipulation and emerged stronger. Then we do it together. The courtroom was packed with journalists, legal observers, and representatives from the French Olympic Committee. Marcus spotted several former athletes in the gallery, victims of Bernard's schemes who had come to see justice served. Coach Bernard sat at the defendant's table, looking smaller and older than Marcus remembered. Prison had not been kind to him. His once commanding presence had withered into something petty and desperate. When their eyes met across the courtroom, Bernard's expression twisted with hatred and resentment. But Marcus felt no anger in return, only a cold satisfaction that this man would finally pay for his crimes. The state calls Marcus de Valois to the stand, the prosecutor announced. Marcus stood and walked to the witness box, his testimony crisp and factual. He outlined the systematic deception that had kept him from his family, the financial manipulation that had kept Aiden in poverty, and the threats that had silenced an Olympic champion for 6 years. In your opinion, Mr. de Valois, the prosecutor asked, what was the defendant's primary motivation? Control, Marcus replied without hesitation. Bernard Leclerc saw my relationship with Aiden as an opportunity to gain power over both of us. He kept us apart not to protect anyone's reputation, but to maintain leverage that he could use for his own benefit. The cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. Bernard's lawyer tried to paint Marcus as a vindictive billionaire using his resources to destroy a man who had simply made mistakes. But the evidence was too overwhelming, the financial records too clear, the pattern of abuse too extensive. The state calls Aiden Morimoto to the stand. This was the moment Marcus had dreaded. Aiden had insisted on testifying, but Marcus knew how difficult it would be for him to relive those painful years in public. As Aiden took the oath and settled into the witness chair, his eyes found Marcus's in the gallery. The look they shared was full of love and support, a silent promise that they would face this together, just as they would face everything else. Mr. Morimoto, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell us about your relationship with the defendant? Aiden's voice was quiet but steady as he recounted his story. The promising athletic career, the night with Marcus, the pregnancy, and then Bernard's devastating intervention. He spoke about the threats, the isolation, the systematic destruction of his ability to provide for his daughter. He told me that Marcus knew about the pregnancy and wanted nothing to do with us, Aiden said, his voice breaking slightly. He made me believe that I was nothing more than an embarrassment, that my daughter was unwanted. For 6 years, I lived with that shame. And how did this affect your ability to care for your daughter? I couldn't find stable work. Every time I got a job interview, Bernard would make a call. Every time I tried to apply for assistance programs, he would intervene. He kept us dependent and desperate, always with the threat that if I ever tried to contact Marcus or tell anyone the truth, he would destroy what little I had left. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal, trying to portray Aiden as a gold digger who had seduced a wealthy sponsor and then fabricated a victim story when it didn't work out. But Aiden never wavered, his quiet dignity shining through even the most aggressive questioning. Mr. Morimoto, the defense attorney sneered, isn't it convenient that you only decided to reveal the truth after my client was arrested on unrelated charges? I didn't reveal anything, Aiden replied calmly. Marcus found us. And when he did, we discovered that we had both been lied to for 6 years by a man who saw our pain as his profit. The most powerful moment came when the prosecutor asked about Luna. What impact has the defendant's actions had on your daughter? Aiden's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down his face. She grew up thinking her father didn't want her. Every time she asked why other children had daddies and she didn't, I had to lie to her because I believed the lies I'd been told. Bernard didn't just steal money. He stole my daughter's childhood sense of security and belonging. In the gallery, Marcus felt his own eyes burning with unshed tears. The magnitude of what Bernard had taken from them was almost incomprehensible. The trial lasted 3 days. Witness after witness testified to Bernard's corruption, his manipulation of young athletes, his systematic theft of funds meant to support French sports. The evidence was overwhelming. When the jury returned with their verdict after less than 2 hours of deliberation, the courtroom was silent. On the charge of embezzlement in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of extortion, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of stalking, we find the defendant guilty. The list went on, each guilty verdict driving another nail into Bernard's coffin. When it was over, he faced 15 years in prison and complete financial ruin. As the judge read the sentence, Bernard finally lost control. He stood up at the defense table, his face twisted with rage. You think you've won? He screamed, pointing at Marcus and Aiden. You think money can erase what you are? A perverted billionaire and his whore athlete. Your daughter will grow up knowing her father is a... The bailiff's gavel cut off his tirade as court officers moved to restrain him. But his poisonous words hung in the air, recorded by every camera in the room. Marcus felt Aiden flinch beside him, the old shame and hurt threatening to resurface. But then Luna, who had been waiting in a secure room during the testimony, was brought in by a court officer. She took one look at the commotion and walked straight to where Marcus and Aiden sat. Without hesitation, she climbed onto Aiden's lap and wrapped her small arms around both her fathers. It's okay, Papa, she whispered loud enough for the microphones to pick up. He can't hurt us anymore. We're together now. The courtroom erupted in chaos as reporters scrambled to capture the moment. But Marcus only had eyes for his family. Aiden was crying openly now, not from shame but from relief and overwhelming love. Luna patted his face gently, the way children do when they're trying to comfort the adults in their lives. "She's right," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around both of them. "We're together now, and nothing, no one, will ever separate us again." Outside the courthouse later, as they faced the inevitable press conference, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "I have a statement to read," he told the assembled reporters. "But first, I want to introduce you to my family." He took Luna's hand and helped her step up to the microphone. Aiden stood on her other side, his arm around Marcus's waist, a gesture of unity that spoke louder than any words. "6 years ago," Marcus began, "I fell in love with an extraordinary man. We were separated by lies and manipulation, but love has a way of finding its way home. Today, justice was served not just for us, but for every athlete who was betrayed by someone they trusted." He looked down at Luna, who waved shyly at the cameras. "This is Luna, my daughter. She's brave, intelligent, and kind. Everything I could hope for in a child. And this is Aiden, her father and the love of my life. We're not a conventional family, but we're a real family. And that's all that matters." The questions came fast and aggressive, but Marcus fielded them with the confidence of a man who had nothing left to hide. Yes, he and Aiden were together. Yes, they planned to marry. No, they would not be selling their story to tabloids or seeking publicity. "Our focus now," he concluded, "is on healing, on building our life together, and on making sure that what happened to us never happens to another family." As they walked away from the courthouse, Luna skipping between them, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 6 years. Complete peace. The web of lies and manipulation had finally been destroyed. The man who had poisoned their lives was facing justice. And most importantly, they were together. Not as the broken fragments Bernard had tried to keep apart, but as a whole, united family ready to face whatever the future might bring. Justice, at last, had been served. 6 months later, Lion Olympic Training Center. The sound of feet hitting the tatami echoed through the newly renovated dojo as young judokas practiced their techniques under Aiden's watchful eye. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the space that had been transformed from a neglected facility into a state-of-the-art training center. "Remember, the power comes from your hips, not your arms," Aiden called out to a group of teenage athletes. "Judo is about using your opponent's strength against them. It's the art of yielding to overcome." The words carried deeper meaning than simple technique instruction, and Aiden smiled as he watched his students absorb the lesson. 6 months ago, he never could have imagined being back in the world of competitive judo, let alone running his own training academy. "Coach Aiden," Luna's voice rang out from the observation area as she burst through the doors, still wearing her school uniform. At nearly 6 years old, she had grown more confident and radiant with each passing day, her amber eyes sparkling with the security that came from being truly loved and wanted. "Hello, sweetheart," Aiden said, accepting her enthusiastic hug. "How was school?" "Amazing. We learned about France in geography class, and I told everyone about our family business." Luna beamed with pride. "Miss Claire said I should bring Papa Marcus to career day next week." The easy way she spoke about their family. No shame, no confusion, just simple acceptance, never failed to warm Aiden's heart. Children, he had learned, were remarkably adaptable when they felt secure and loved. "Speaking of Papa Marcus," Aiden said, glancing toward the entrance where a familiar figure was approaching. "Here he comes now." Marcus entered the dojo with the quiet confidence that had become second nature to him, but his expression softened immediately when he saw Luna running toward him. He caught her in his arms, spinning her around as she giggled with delight. "How are my two favorite people?" he asked, pressing a kiss to the top of Luna's head before walking over to embrace Aiden. The casual intimacy still felt miraculous after so many years of separation. Marcus's arms around him, the mingled scent of their pheromones creating a harmony that spoke of true compatibility, the simple pleasure of being held by his mate. Aiden sometimes had to pinch himself to believe it was real. "We're perfect," Aiden replied, meaning it completely. "The afternoon session went well. I think 3 of our students are ready for their next belt promotion." Marcus smiled, his pride evident. "The Olympic Committee called this morning. They want to feature the academy in their youth development program. Full funding for equipment and international coaching exchanges. That's wonderful. Aiden breathed, still sometimes amazed by how completely his life had transformed. When I think about where we were a year ago. Don't, Marcus said gently, his hand cupping Aiden's face. We're not looking backward anymore. Remember? Only forward. It had become their mantra during the challenging months of rebuilding their relationship and dealing with the aftermath of Bernard's trial. The media attention had eventually died down, replaced by genuine respect for their courage in speaking out against corruption in athletics. Aiden had been offered book deals, movie rights, sponsorship opportunities, all of which he had declined in favor of focusing on what truly mattered, his family and helping young athletes achieve their dreams. The academy had been Marcus's idea, but it had become Aiden's passion project. Using his Olympic credentials and Marcus's business resources, they had created something unique. A training facility that prioritized athlete welfare and education alongside competitive success. Every coach was thoroughly vetted, every program designed with transparency and ethics at its core. Papa Marcus, Luna said, tugging on his sleeve. Are you still going to help me with my math homework tonight? Of course, princess, Marcus replied, his voice soft with paternal love. But first, your papa and I have something important to discuss. Aiden raised an eyebrow curiously as Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The sight of it made Aiden's breath catch in his throat. Marcus, he whispered. What are you? 6 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady but emotional. I made you a promise without words. I marked you as mine, claimed you as my mate. But then I let circumstances tear us apart. I've spent every day since then regretting that I didn't fight harder to keep you. He dropped to one knee in the middle of the dojo, completely unconcerned about the handful of teenage athletes who had stopped their practice to stare. Luna clapped her hands together with excitement, bouncing on her toes. Aiden Morimoto, Marcus continued, his amber eyes locked on Aiden's face. You are the strongest, most courageous person I have ever known. You've given me the greatest gift imaginable, our daughter, and you've shown me what it means to love without reservation. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the family you've given me? The ring was perfect. A simple platinum band with a single diamond that caught the light from the windows. But Aiden barely saw it through the tears blurring his vision. Yes, he whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The teenagers erupted in cheers as Marcus slipped the ring onto Aiden's finger and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like promises and forever. Luna launched herself at both of them, creating a group hug that perfectly encapsulated their little family's joy. When? Aiden asked breathlessly when they finally broke apart. Whenever you want, Marcus replied. Tomorrow, next month, next year. I just want to make it official. I want the whole world to know that you're mine and I'm yours. What about a Christmas wedding? Luna piped up with the practical enthusiasm of childhood. That way all our presents would be together. Both men laughed at her logic. Christmas sounds perfect, Aiden agreed, looking at Marcus for confirmation. Christmas it is, Marcus said, sealing the promise with another kiss. 3 months later, Christmas Eve. The small ceremony was held in the renovated chapel of a centuries-old chateau outside Lyon, decorated with white roses and evergreen garlands that filled the air with the scent of winter and new beginnings. The guest list was intimate, close friends, family members, and a handful of athletes from the academy who had become like extended family. Aiden stood at the altar in an elegant charcoal suit, his hands steady as he waited for Marcus to join him. The months since their engagement had passed in a blur of wedding planning, academy expansion, and the simple joy of being together as a family. The music began, and Marcus appeared at the back of the chapel, devastatingly handsome in his midnight blue suit. But Aiden's attention was immediately captured by Luna, who walked beside Marcus as their flower girl. She wore a white velvet dress and carried a basket of rose petals, her face glowing with happiness as she scattered them along the aisle. When they reached the altar, Luna took her place in the front row between Henri and Marie, Marcus's head of security and lead attorney who had become unlikely surrogate grandparents. Marcus took his place beside Aiden, their hands finding each other with the natural ease of true mates. Dearly beloved, The officiant began, but Aiden barely heard the traditional words. His focus was entirely on Marcus, on the love shining in those amber eyes, on the promise of forever that stretched ahead of them. The vows they had written were simple but heartfelt. Marcus spoke of redemption, of second chances, of the miracle of finding his family against all odds. Aiden talked about strength, about the courage to love despite past pain, about building something beautiful from broken pieces. I, Marcus, take you, Aiden, to be my husband, my mate, my partner in all things. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to stand by your side through whatever challenges life may bring. I promise to be the father Luna deserves and the husband you've always needed. I, Aiden, take you, Marcus, to be my husband, my mate, my anchor in every storm. I promise to trust you with my heart, to share my strength with yours, to build a life worthy of the love we've found. I promise to be your equal partner in raising our daughter and any children who may join our family. When they exchanged rings, Marcus's matching platinum band joining Aiden's engagement ring, both men's hands shook slightly with emotion. By the power vested in me by the Republic of France, the officiant declared, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss your husband. The kiss was soft, reverent, full of promises and possibility. Around them, their small gathering erupted in applause, but Aiden was aware only of Marcus, of this moment, of the absolute rightness of being exactly where they belonged. The reception was held in the chateau's grand ballroom, transformed into a winter wonderland with twinkling lights and seasonal flowers. Luna gave a speech that brought tears to every eye, thanking both her papas for making our family complete and promising to be the best daughter ever. As the evening wound down and their guests began to depart, Marcus and Aiden found themselves on the chateau's terrace, looking out over the snow-covered gardens. Luna had fallen asleep in Henry's arms hours ago and been tucked into bed in one of the guest rooms. No regrets? Marcus asked, pulling Aiden closer against the winter chill. Only one? Aiden replied, smiling up at his husband. His husband? In the moonlight, Marcus's expression grew concerned. What? That it took us so long to get here? Aiden said, reaching up to trace the strong line of Marcus's jaw. But then again, maybe we needed those years apart to become the people we needed to be for each other. Wise words from my wise husband, Marcus murmured, pressing a kiss to Aiden's temple. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall beyond the terrace lights. In the distance, Lion's lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and Aiden thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The pain, the separation, the lies that had kept them apart. All of it had led to this perfect night, this perfect life they were building together. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked quietly. Luna, Aiden admitted. How different her life is going to be from what I imagined 6 years ago. Growing up with two fathers who adore her, with opportunities one never dreamed of, with the security of being truly wanted and loved. She's going to be extraordinary, Marcus said with complete certainty. Just like her papa. Both her papas, Aiden corrected, leaning into his mate's warmth. Above them, the stars shone down on the chateau, on the sleeping city, on a family that had been torn apart by lies and brought back together by love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, new opportunities to prove that sometimes the best things in life were worth waiting for. But tonight, on this perfect Christmas Eve, as snow fell like blessings around them, Marcus and Aiden de Valois were exactly where they belonged. In each other's arms, surrounded by love, with their daughter safe and happy under the same roof. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility and warm with the promise of forever. They had survived the darkness, fought through the lies, and emerged victorious on the other side. Their love story was complete, not because it had ended, but because it was finally, truly just beginning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next video.